Do not be the professional pawn. What inspired this video today was a young woman's video popping up in my recommendations. And she was talking a little bit about her experience in corporate America. And the points that she was making in her video, it felt parallel to experiences that I've had myself years ago in professional sectors. And I actually wanted to elaborate on the points that stood out to me in this video today. One of the first points that she made that stuck out like a sore thumb, she stated that the people who inflicted the most emotional and mental torment were typically the people who did the least amount of work. And to add icing on the cake, those were typically the people in positions of leadership and authority. Those were the people she had to answer to. And when she made that statement, I couldn't help but think about the top of the pyramid excerpt in the book In the Lion's Den, Navigating Systems of Power. In that excerpt, it breaks down the fact that this symbolic professional pyramid, those who are at the top of this pyramid typically bring aboard subordinates. They bring aboard talent with the sole purpose of cycling through them. So they cycle through temporary talent, and the purpose of doing so is to exhaust them of their time, their potential, their valuable resources, contributions, experiences, in order to exploit them, to keep themselves at the top and to keep them at the bottom, those who are actually contributing at the bottom. Now, of course, these are predatory pyramids, right? So there are other professional sectors and spaces that they don't operate from these principles. However, I think it's important for people to have the full perspective before they start to align themselves with certain spaces and they think it's going to be peachy keen. And they have no idea that predatory personalities may be on the horizon. So this woman's video was more so in alignment with a lot of the things that I talk about on my channel, where, yeah, ideally, you want to set an intention and work on a particular goal and everything works out. But it's also important for you to be prepared for some of the challenges and roadblocks that may be, waiting in the cut. But another thing that she stated that I was like, wow, this is so true. She mentioned that not only were these people contributing the least, but their idea of productivity was just having meetings and talking. And listen, it took me back to an experience that I had years ago. And I remember we just kept having these unexplainable amount of meetings. Like, it was so unnecessary. It's like every time I blinked, we're having a meeting. But the worst thing about it is these meetings weren't constructive. Nothing was getting done. We would think we came to a common agreement, and then by the next meeting, it was a completely different agenda. And the work that was accomplished in the previous meeting was completely disregarded. And now we're switching to a new direction. It was chaotic. So finally, after maybe like the 30th or 50th meeting, in a matter of like maybe 2 weeks, I'm exaggerating, of course, but it was a lot. I remember I let the woman speak, and it was the same rhetoric that I had been hearing for the past few months at this point. And I said to the lady, we're talking in circles. What are we going to do next? And as I left that meeting that day, I felt kind of bad. I was like, why would you tell that lady that? And I laughed to myself. But at the same time, the reason why I had got to that point is because having the professional experience that I do, even though people, at a glance, this is why it's important to not judge books by their cover. At a glance, and maybe from the way that I sound, people don't expect that I have the experience that I do, especially in a professional capacity. So for context, I remember working with a particular organization, and my job was to actually help secure funding. And I mean thousands to millions of dollars worth of funding, as well as assisting with the presentation so this project can get started up. And the presentation in itself, when it was go time for us to show, the goals, the projected budget timelines, the budget breakdown, when it came time for us to show all of this to people who were like mayors in certain cities. So I'm talking, this was a big deal. When it came time for us to do those presentations, do you all know it took a maximum of 30 minutes? The entire gathering in itself was an hour. 30 minutes was dedicated to people, coming into the room and settling in so that they can prepare to see the presentation. The other 30 minutes, it literally went like this. 25 minutes was dedicated to the presentation and questions. And then the other 5 minutes was dedicated to a debriefing session where the person who was going to tell you whether or not they were willing to fund the project gives you a yay or a nay. So, and on top of that, the preparation process for all of this was a couple of weeks. So you mean to tell me that process in itself, the presentation alone, took 30 minutes, and you mean to tell me a simple task where all we have to do is communicate and follow up on emails, right, and do little virtual check-ins. You mean to tell me that we can't figure this out and you all are still so confused about next steps for the past 5 to 6 months? And this is how you get utilized as a professional pawn. In the book, In the Lion's Den, Navigating Systems of Power, it also breaks down how people utilize these tactics, like moving the goalpost to milk the clock on you. So having that experience, what it really taught me, being in that room and working with those members, was if people really wanted to, they would. And this is applicable not just to professionalism, but it can be in any relationship that you have. It could be platonic, it could be romantic, it can be familial. If people wanted to, they would. Being in that kind of environment, and even as someone who I'm very much so protective of people that I love and care about, so all it takes is for you to call me up and be like, I'm struggling with this, and I'm going to go to the drawing board and find a solution. I may not have experience in that arena, but I know somebody who at least knows somebody who has experience and a resource for you. So if I can pull those strings to help someone that I care about in a matter of minutes, what is possibly getting in our way? We've been going over the same spiel for the past 5 to 6 months, and you mean to tell me that it's still so difficult for us to come to a common agreement and to proceed forward with next steps? Being in that professional environment where we were able to knock out a project in a matter of a couple of weeks, execute a presentation in a matter of 25 to 30 minutes, and then in an additional 5 minutes get secured funding, after that point, you cannot convince me. After experiencing that, if you start talking in circles, I'm instantly irritated. I'm not even gonna lie. Because I know you just don't want to do it. I know you don't want to do it. I know you're not interested in actually working towards it. I know it. And I remember being in this professional setting. I got so tired of the talking in circles. I took matters into my own hands and I was like, you know what? It's fine. I'll just find my own resource and I'll do it myself. And I was reprimanded for that. And what put it into perspective as far as what was going on, even though I was already questioning, and I was speaking to my pastor about it, and I was like, I have never been in this type of situation before. I've never dealt with this much confusion and this much misunderstanding in my life. And I remember my pastor told me, and he was like, after a certain point, you have to start, setting a boundary for your own well-being. And I said, you don't have to tell me twice. But the final, I guess, hoorah. This was another meeting, yet again, of course. And it was a virtual meeting. And they sent someone different for us to have another meaningless conversation. So we're doing the fake introduction, of course, oh, how are you doing? I hope everything's great, blase, blase, the script, the typical. And finally, we start getting into the nitty-gritty of next steps. So I'm looking at this woman on the screen, and I'm realizing that she keeps looking to the side. Instantly, I think to myself, I said, is someone else on another device telling her what to say and what not to say? So immediately my defenses go up because I'm like, yet again, these are the games that I'm constantly talking about. We're not working on actual goals. It's more so looking like you guys are playing games. So instantly my defenses go up and I'm like, I'm just going to let her speak on this one. Because I'm coming in here for possible solutions and to work towards something, but yet again, they're here on games. So finally, she gets to the point to where she parts her lips to tell me, well, certain people that we work with are gatekeepers. And, you want to make sure that you get in good graces with them because they're the ones who are going to open opportunities for you. Instantly, it all clicked for me. I said, and this is what I've been saying. And this was confirmation when you said this. This isn't about us working towards a tangible goal. And this has been proven because every time I've met a particular goal set before me, the goalpost was moved. This is about me tap dancing and jumping through hoops for these quote unquote gatekeepers. Now, as much as I, would love to consider the idea, now, of course, I'm being sarcastic, but realistically, what I was explaining to them is, as much as I would love to consider that as an option, I don't even have the luxury of flirting with that idea because all of my time has been dedicated to going back to the drawing board because you all keep moving the goalpost. So not only am I doing the work, but I'm going back and I'm doing damage control from problems that you all manufactured. So I don't even have time to jump through hoops and to tap dance for you. I don't even have that luxury, especially now with the other responsibilities on my plate. In professional environments, especially professional environments that utilize exploitation, they love people with vices. And vices are not limited to the vices that we are aware of. It's not just limited to alcohol. It's not just limited to drugs. It's not just limited to romantic and, intimate rendezvous. Vices can also be approval. Vices can also be acceptance. Vices could also be someone who is battling with feelings of jealousy, envy, and competitiveness. This is why I don't necessarily ascribe to the competitive and competition trope. I think that there are certain spaces where competition kind of comes with the territory, but I feel like something is a little bit off and dangerous about someone who is in a constant competitive state because you're more so focused on comparing yourself with other people rather than focusing on your own lane. And someone who is looking to utilize someone as a professional pawn is going to peep that and utilize it for their own benefit. They will distract people with competition. So if you're someone who you can't get your competitive streak in check, that will be utilized against you. Because someone who plans to exploit you knows that all they have to do is put someone in your path who you feel like is a threat to your quote unquote position, and you're going to be so distracted with competing with them rather than realizing, oh, wait a minute, the person who's pulling the strings is sitting comfortably on their throne while wreaking all of this havoc. You could be somebody who peeps the play and you try to give that person a heads up, but because they're so fixated on competing with you and outdoing you and outshining you, they don't see it. So there are going to be some people that you have to leave behind. What actually made me think about this is I saw another video, and ironically enough, the person was talking about cooking. And they were saying it in a joking manner. They were like, and now I understand why Harriet had to leave some people behind. And they were referring to Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. But even when we think about breaking free from counterproductive systems in a professional sector, there are some people who love bondage. And another analogy that came to me was the story of the Israelites and how they were delivered, or they were being given the opportunity to be delivered out of captivity and out of bondage. And not only were there some who stayed stuck in the wilderness and they didn't make it to the promised land, but there were actually some who went back to captivity. There are some people, and the reason being that it's easier to be controlled than to take control over your own life. You know how hard it is for you to people play and then be like, you know what, I have to pivot because I see that this isn't going to end well. It's not a comfortable process. Even with the story of the Israelites in the wilderness and they had to purge, that wasn't a comfortable process of them deprogramming from, the mental conditions that they had to adapt to due to being in captivity, due to being in bondage. They had to break free from that programming. Like, that's a lot of hard work. And you have to start from ground zero because you can't take the old with you into the new. So it's almost like you're being broken down. You're being broken down to square one. And you have to be built back up again from ground zero. It's not a comfortable process. So some people, because they can't take that heat, or because they prefer shortcuts. It's a shortcut to tap dance. It's a shortcut to allow someone to put a battery in your back to compete with another person and knock them off the board, right? Rather than you actually utilizing your mind and being like, you know what? I don't need to knock the next person off the board. I need to figure out how I'm going to make my mark through my own work ethic. Some people do have to get left behind because they will actually become a liability to you. So when someone is willingly playing the position of the professional pawn, and you're someone who you're just like, I see where this is headed and I'm not interested, you actually have to separate yourself. Some people you can't lead to the light. They prefer to be stuck in darkness. So since I have been referencing this chessboard in relation to professional dynamics a lot thus far, I actually felt compelled to read from the excerpt in the book Green Eyes. And it reads, when a battle has been initiated, that is not the time to lose your sense of self-esteem and confidence. Before one stands their ground against jealous and envious individuals, one needs to know the game that is being played against them. Whether the jealous or envious person is aware that they are playing a game or not, put yourself in a position where you are aware of the schemes and tactics either way. The game in question will be referenced to the game of chess. And before playing, you must know the components: the plot, objective, the territory, challenges, the players, aka the opponents, application, and reflection/awareness. When dealing with envious persons, you must be aware of two things: the envious person's position and your position as the target of envy. Whether we embrace the reality or not, when faced with an envious individual in our lives, we must accept the fact we have officially been placed on a figurative chessboard, meaning that an envious individual differentiates themselves from a jealous individual due to their relentless pursuit of taking what the target of envy possesses, or in extreme cases, taking out their competition altogether. There are certain temperature tests that people will try to take you through, and you jumping through those hoops is actually not the flex that you think it is. The moment that you agree to someone's disrespect, they're always going to have in the back of their mind that you are their subordinate who's willing to jump through their hoops. I know a lot of people think that by appeasing and, accommodating for certain people who are being really hostile and disrespectful towards them, they're talking to them crazy, talking about them recklessly, sabotaging them. A lot of people think that by them finding a way to accommodate for this person or make this person feel better, make this person feel like, okay, well, I'll just fight for your approval and your acceptance to soften the blow. A lot of people think that that's a flex, and it's not. What you're doing is you're feeding the beast. This person has gotten away with being so tyrannical, and all you're doing is you're enabling that behavior. So no, you're not going to be the change. This is this person's program. As long as you are feeding the beast, you will never be the change. And to add insult to injury, you thinking that by you cozying up under these people and kissing up to them, even though they're disrespecting you, they're not giving you your just due, you think that that's getting you in good graces. But all it's doing is reminding them that they made the right decision, keeping you as a subordinate. That abuse doesn't just happen in familial or romantic relationships. Abuse can also present itself in professional environments as well. All right, babes, that's all that I have for this analysis today. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. But of course, I want to hear you all's comments, opinions, perspectives, as well as your personal experiences with the situation, such as what was described in this analysis today. I look forward to speaking to you guys in the next video, babes. Take care.